Welcome to What Works, where nonprofit leaders share real stories about what makes impact possible and their organizations thrive. Because really, success has patterns, and you often find that the best operational secrets aren't found in the boardroom, but in the field. I'm your host, Marla Moody, a creative leadership coach with 3 decades in the nonprofit sector. And today, we're going to talk about scaling to support demanding, growing needs around the nation and how to pivot as needs shift, something that all of our organizations face as we expand. Joining me today is Megan Steckly, the CEO of CompuDopt, a national nonprofit closing the digital divide. Under her leadership, CompuDopt has grown from one location to over 40 cities across 28 states, reaching more than 300,000 people each year. Megan is here to tell us what works. Welcome, Megan.
Thank you so much, Marla. It's my pleasure to be here. We're honored to be a part of this.
I've been looking forward to it. You might know that the technology side is where I came from and actually where I went back to. It's fun to talk to someone who is in that realm. Megan, I'd like you to start with what is CompuDopt? CompuDopt. Tell us a little bit of what the goal is and how you got involved.
Yeah, absolutely. So CompuDopt is the largest nonprofit in the country with a complete solution that's dedicated to solving the digital divide. We've been around for 18 years. We got started in Houston, Texas. What I mean when we say we have a complete solution to solve the digital divide, I mean that we address it in 4 core pillars. The first one is around device access, and we take retired corporate technology as well as individual devices, and we wipe, refurbish, recondition them, and get them back out to kids and families that don't have access to their own computers at home. Those come with 2 years of free tech support, 2-year warranties alongside them. And then the second pillar is, of course, if you have a computer at home, the best way to get connected is to make sure that you have internet access. We know that 41% of economically disadvantaged Americans still don't have access to high-speed internet at home. That equates to about 14 million households in total. We support families through free and low-cost plans that are either through sponsored big providers like AT&T or Comcast, or through our own network. We are actually an ISP, which is one of the most insane things we decided to do. So we can get people connected to the internet. The third pillar is if you have a computer and you have an internet connection, you want to know how to use it and you want to know how to use it safely. And so digital literacy, digital fluency, basic skills, care and use of your device. And then the final pillar is around technology education that's aligned towards workforce. This is the pillar that really makes my skirt twirl. We're actually not doing the work to just hand somebody a computer and an internet connection. We're really doing the work because we care about economic mobility and we want to change the way that poverty looks in our communities. In fact, we'd really like it to not look anything at all, and we really want to be solving for that. We believe through our theory of change that addressing these pillars is a really important way to create better economic mobility in communities across the country in a way that's really meaningful and puts lives of choice back right into their hands.
The fourth one seems to be a unique piece of what you're doing.
Yeah.
How did that come about? I'd love to hear more of the genesis of that.
Yeah, so I think the origin story starts a little bit before I joined the organization. I've been with CompuDopt for 10 years, and they had started some after-school programming. A lot of that was focused towards high school students in what was called our Learn to Earn program. We brought them into our refurbishment lab. They learned how to refurbish a computer, and then they earned a computer through refurbishing enough computers that they got to take one home themselves. Education, to me, is one of the levers that is the most powerful that we can pull to really create lives of choice and lasting change in community members' situations. I really saw an opportunity for us to play a differentiated role in the after-school space. This is about 2015. At the time, STEM education was getting really big, really popular, and we were a tiny little organization, right? We're on a $230,000 operating budget. We were really trying to find opportunities to identify funding, but also that fit nicely within our mission and what we wanted to do. STEM jobs are still the fastest growing employment market in the United States, with I think 98% of all jobs right now requiring some form of technical skills. But most STEM jobs, when you dig into it, the majority majority are actually technology jobs, right? So of that science, technology, engineering, and math, the majority of jobs are actually technology jobs. So there was little to no after school programming that was really dedicated towards technology education. When we think about after school, out of school time programs, what we're really aiming for is to like incite students' curiosity to continue to learn and to see themselves as confident young learners. As an example, my favorite program that we have right now is called Early Adopters. We turn all the kids into astronauts. They get kits. In these kits is a gold envelope, like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. When they open this envelope, inside of it is a Mad Lib. Maybe it says like, Sue and Rebecca are on the rocket ship to Pluto, and the first planet that they pass is pink with green marshmallows floating around it. Then the first activity that we have students do is that they design that pink planet with green marshmallows in augmented reality. And then we give them a merge cube, which are really cool little $15 foam dice about the size of your fist. When they put those merge cubes in front of the camera on the laptop in front of them, it turns into this planet that they've just designed. This is so cool, right? It's gone from imagination to literally holding something in their hand in about 90 minutes. While it's a gamified learning experience, we talk about how this is the future of architecture, engineering, and video game design, and how applicable this like design thinking, creativity, problem solving, and logic weave into all kinds of possibilities for students' futures. We really hope that students, when they're seeing an AR programmer job, they're seeing themselves within it and they're going, I did that. It was really fun. I was good at it. And that's a pathway that I can consider. It's just more about opening up these opportunities to think about a different path forward than it is about making sure that they have coding skills. Right? It's the abstract reasoning, the thinking, the problem solving, and sort of that hopeful optimism that we're looking for.
I love this idea because you started with confidence, which of course is brilliant because you're not talking about giving them a skill, you're talking about changing their view of themselves. Because without confidence, you don't try things, you don't risk things. You think poorly usually about yourself, and those are self-fulfilling prophecy. Creativity, you mentioned, it takes a lot of confidence. Like creativity is a very risky thing because you're showing yourself.
That's right.
And problem solving, abstract thinking, these are things that mold your brain as well as give you skill sets. You're building a foundation that goes well beyond touching a computer and building the sense of possibility is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, absolutely. Spot on. That's what we're aiming for.
I am curious with AI coming into the future and how that sometimes, one, it can be a beautiful game changer,
Sure.
as in helpful, but it also can make us lazy or make us not be the problem solvers or not be abstract. What does it look like for you guys to tackle that where you're leveraging the quality of it but not having them fall into the I'll just type it into ChatGPT
Yeah.
and it do the work for me.
Use it as a cheat code. Yeah. So I feel like I've got two gut reaction responses to that. The first is, for me, it makes the case even stronger for the need for programs that promote that creativity, that promote abstract reasoning, that promote problem solving. AI is only going to continue to get more powerful, and it's only going to continue to do more for us. And where that places the responsibility on us is in becoming better thinkers, right? I hope that AI brings
Yes.
forward another age of philosophy. And maybe that's a really abstract, hyper idealist position to be taking, but I hope that it brings forward another age of thinking that allows us to hold space to challenge our own belief and value systems and how we want the world to work and operate, because that's where we're going to continue to add value. It's where we're going to continue to amplify the positive aspects of AI that will probably be handling a lot of task-based execution that right now makes us maybe feel productive, but isn't necessarily fulfilling. I think that that's a really positive vision for the future, that we could see an opportunity for ourselves, not as losing with where AI comes in, but as, space creation for whatever else we've not yet even imagined. Now, a little bit closer to earth, I can speak to for CompuDopt, we've just developed our one of our most recent iterations of some of our tech education programs. One of them is called Smart Spaces, and it does integrate AI. We've got students are really designing a smart home with smart space for them, and doing a lot of the thinking around what would be helpful. Is it security system? Does this help with the lights and music, and how does it add value into my life, but also thinking through some of the security things of having listening devices, and what does that mean, what do you need to be mindful of as an individual and a human when you're integrating with technology that has so much unfettered access to your private life. So we have a lot of conversations about that too.
I bet.
Yeah.
I want to shift a little bit back to a conversation we had before and about how the pandemic really was a game changer for you guys. I'd love to hear a little bit about that story, and then I have some follow-up questions with that.
As I mentioned before, 10 years ago, CompuDopt was pretty much me and about 2 other people. We were serving about 700 kids a year just in Houston, Texas. In 2019, we'd grown to serve about 3,500 kids a year, again, just in Houston. We'd stabilized the organization. We had a really strong presence here. We were really poised to go national. I am a person that likes hard challenges. I went to my board and said, I think we should nationalize. Our board is phenomenal. And they said, okay, let's do it. We spent a lot of 2019 restructuring the organization and positioning ourselves for the ability to grow like that. And we were fortunate to be in a really good position where we'd put another colleague of mine in the executive director role for Houston. So I had no operating responsibilities anymore to Houston. I was overseeing the whole of the organization, but he was really handling the execution locally. He took over the day that we all got shut down for the pandemic. What a way to start that job.
Well, you're welcome.
No, yeah. And what was amazing was on that day, we had about 400 computers sitting in our 20,000 square foot warehouse here in Houston. And nobody knew what was going to be happening next. So he and I kind of put our heads together. And while we used to hand out computers by setting up mobile classrooms in cafeterias or gyms, we decided to build a computer drive-through. We mapped it out on the wall of our classroom. And we put a lottery list, a registration list up on our website. And then he and I just shared it out through our personal Facebook pages, thinking, we'll get rid of these 400 computers because we hope they help. And I guess then we'll figure out what happens next. And in the first 24 hours, we had 30,000 people register for a device. It broke our website. We turned up the next day and had like more than a mile long line of cars waiting, trying to get access to these computers. Every news station in the city showed up, and I'm in a vest with my hair wet and braids. I was not prepared to be on camera, but this is where we found ourselves. From there, our phones rang off the hook, and we were so incredibly blessed to have a substantial amount of philanthropy and opportunities for philanthropy that came in from there. It was our launch pad. The mayor of New Orleans somehow got my cell phone number and seen one of our news articles and said, can you bring this here? And so launched our nationalization. We did eventually get into New Orleans, but in the meantime, we were able to expand first to Chicago and Washington, D.C. and Dallas. Those were our first core markets. In 2020 alone, we handed out 21,000 computers across the country, and with about 11 staff. I did any state that was not Texas with, me in my car and loading laptops into the trunk. It probably looked very questionable at the time, but in reality, it was meeting this incredibly urgent, very emergent need. And then, since then, we walked into 2025 this year on a $32 million operating budget. Will impact 300,000 people this year across 80 cities and 28 states. So it's been incredible.
Wow. That's fast growth. And that shows that pivot too, right? You guys had already started thinking national, but the agility to go that quickly and do it on the fly really met a need. I've spent time in Tajikistan and in Egypt. One thing that hits me when you go to the History Museum in Egypt is you can see when there was a famine because education and the arts dropped off. So you have this real intricate
Wow.
art, and then you see later art that is much more primal, and then you start seeing it change, and it has to do with that education and the not investing in education and in the
Hmm.
arts. Then in Tajikistan they had a civil war that lasted 10 years. When we came in to do work trying to find educated people to help with our NGO, we had to actually outsource some from other countries because there was that 10-year gap of education, that we lost a whole generation of people that knew how to problem solve and to be creative with their solutions and know basic things. So I'm emphasizing to you what I've seen in other countries, where when you have a gap in knowledge, it's not just for that time period. It really extends much longer and it affects a second generation.
Yeah.
So, so you stepping into that gap, which was a huge gap when the pandemic hit and everybody had to go online. I still know that there was education gap, right? Being able to step into that and give people at least a bit of a chance is brilliant. And the fact that you just didn't say, okay, we're done with it, but it launched you into really being able to positively affect our society that way.
Yeah, thank you. That's so true too. I think one of the things that I've loved about just our own learning experience in doing this work is, you know, we take a lot for granted, right? Even when I joined this organization, I kind of thought like, okay, well, I think most people probably have a computer, right? You don't really spend much time thinking about your life without one when you're somebody that has one at home, or what it feels
Yeah.
like to not have an internet connection. But if we think about like even when we move houses, what's the first thing that we're so stressed about getting? Right. As soon as we move house, we can't wait for that internet connection to be turned on, right? We are bereft without it. So if you imagine, there's households that are living their whole lives and the only barrier between them and having internet is truly an affordability gap. In some, more rural regional areas, there's actually, truly, not the infrastructure there, but for the majority of families that we're serving, it is really about affordability and speeds. In this day and age, the amount of content that is beyond reach if you don't have access to your own technology at home. I mean, we're talking about like telehealth and online banking. One of my like big soapboxes is around how we talk about families being economically disadvantaged. We measure it really on like household income. But a lot of the families that we're serving are some of the most time poor families in the whole country. They work multiple jobs, they're working nights, they work strange hours. A lot of times these people, I mean, they're exponentially more likely to cash their checks in person, pay their bills in person. And when we take that into account, in part because they don't have technology access at home, the amount of time spent in the car, the amount of money spent on gas, the mileage put on their vehicles, right? Having to coordinate your life around business hours of operation so that you can do those things when you're also balancing multiple jobs and typically, have kids at home too. So when we give somebody technology access at home, we're also giving them family time back. All of a sudden they're reading to their kids before bed because they're not having to figure out when they're going to fit in something else, or they're figuring out that they can have their groceries delivered. That time savings is a huge part of what actually can make a fundamental shift in
Mm.
that family's dynamic, even beyond just the economic mobility of, being able to do workforce skill training and that kind of thing. Yeah.
It's good to piece that apart and realize the the lower income you are, the more penalties you have.
Mm.
But time poor is something I wouldn't think about. I want to go back a little bit to the idea of your growth going from 8 people to how many people do you have now in?
About 160.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's always growth pains with
Yes.
that. Where are you finding some of those growth pains in light of raising a team up, the health of the team, some of those pieces?
My greatest lesson through all of this growth is that at every stage of our organization, from moving from 230,000 and just two people through to 160 now, there's probably been six different iterations of the organization and six different types of leadership needed within each of those iterations, and not just from me but from the rest of the team. When we think about pain points and how we've maybe addressed some of those, I think at this point in hindsight, I would say first and foremost, leadership goes to those that show up. That doesn't mean a title, right? That doesn't just mean that because I'm the CEO, therefore I am the leader. With this kind of exponential growth, we've really had to put an immense amount of trust into the hands of people, and that early on in COVID, I hadn't even met, right? Like, taught them over the phone how to run a computer distribution, and now we've got, more junior staff who are totally in charge of flying across the country, showing up, setting up, stewarding major donors, stewarding volunteers, making sure community members are taken care of. That role requires leadership. So I think along the way, our pain points have been both the need to get through to the discomfort of things having to happen exactly the way that they've always happened, and wanting people to do it that way, and wanting certainty that it's going to be done that way. And circling all the way back around to needing to make sure that we are empowering our team, and that looks like trust, and it looks like an expectation of leadership, which for the most part, our team is so phenomenal. Like, they just lean right into that, whether they recognize it all the time or not.
Yes.
Um, I think that has really helped kind of weather this exponential growth and the pain that absolutely comes with it.
Yeah, you mentioned something that I want to underscore, because as a leader, for one way or other, we're put in a position because we've done something successful enough for
Hmm.
people to give us the reins to something, right or wrong. Right? But we tend to be good at the stuff that we're put in charge of. And so I like what you said. It's the discomfort of handing something over,
Hmm.
and the discomfort of really going, this isn't going to look exactly the way I would do it.
Hmm.
And that kind of stinks because we
It
want it
does.
done. We want to be little clones, right? And yet, even if you had the identical people and you were cloning it, you wouldn't be as good as what happens when there's some flaring out and changing of what you do. I'm seeing a smile and a
Yeah.
nod. What are your thoughts
Yeah.
on that?
One of our core values organizationally is that we start at yes. I love that we brought this in. It's certainly a me core value, and also it has been the bane of my existence that we have said this. But what I would like to underline, in case anybody decides to adopt that themselves, is that that doesn't mean yes. It means that we
Mm,
start there, right?
mm-hmm.
That start word is actually really critical to that value. What we're really trying to do is we start open-minded, and we want to be responsive to what the need is in the community. Organizationally, we want to be responsive to what our staff are telling us. Organizationally, we want to be responsive to what we see from our roles as the executive team, and have staff hear us too within that. Be transparent about what our thinking is through all of those stages. But there's so much discomfort for people in starting at yes. I think a lot of it is rooted in a fear of failure. I'm certainly in the fail fast camp. I have really low risk aversion. I want to throw everything at the wall. I'm the easiest yes on our entire C-suite team. I'll ask hard questions, but I'm the easiest yes, which is also why I have surrounded myself with the C-suite who, and if my COO listens to this, she'll hate that I'm going to say this, but I call her the brick to my balloon. She really wants to be more of the string, but I need her to be the brick to my balloon. The rest of my C-suite are similarly complementary in that they'll go, yeah, okay, we're going to start at yes, we're going to consider that, we're going to be open-minded. And here are the 700 other steps that are going to be required so that we can be successful within that. Now, coming back to this, like, I want people to do it my way, that's a really frustrating space to be in when you're somebody that wants to move really quickly
Oh,
and
yes.
see the vision. That moving from rowing my own boat pretty much by myself to running a cruise line. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that is rough. And also, we're so much better for it.
I don't know if it's an African proverb or whatever, but if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go long, go with others.
Go with others. Yeah,
And
that's right.
there really is something about that. There's speed to a certain degree, but there obviously can't be full growth.
Hmm.
One thing that I've heard and I want to just repeat is someone doing something at 100% is going to be better than me doing it at 5%.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I always be like, no, it's like the 80-20 rule. They do it 80% as well as I can. And it's like, I'm not giving 80% to that because there's just too much to do.
Yeah.
But the growth will never happen when there's not that walking in that discomfort in that space. And I
Hmm.
love that you said too that your leadership team is one that has diversity to it, right? That
Hmm.
there's the ones that are asking different questions, and even building that leadership team takes work. A good
Hmm.
leadership team just doesn't happen. It takes a lot of conversations and purposefulness and
Yeah.
um but building that. When you think through like finding talent, like hiring people that are good, where have you found that to be successful and where has that been a challenge for you?
I'll start by answering the challenge side of that first, because I am a person that can really believe in people's potential beyond their own interest in living up to that. There was a period of time 6 years ago or so, 6 or 7 years ago, where I just kept meeting people at coffee shops and getting into these really great conversations. I was like, yeah, we can find a place for you on our team. And again, it was just, here's I can see someone and I can feel inspired by them. I was like, surely they'll want to make a contribution and that this will be whatever it is. But, meeting people and having great conversations at coffee shops is great and sometimes can be an indicator of maybe a good culture fit. But people are totally different when you ask them to do a job and what actually fulfills them. So abandoning that strategy was a real good call. I think as we've gotten better at identifying talent, number one, I think we've hired a really exceptional VP over people and culture who has taught us a lot about that. But I think my two takeaways for hiring good talent, the first one is fives hire fours and nines hire tens, and get real comfortable with that. Everybody wants to be a 10, but honestly, if you can be a 9 and you can hire a 10, your whole life will be a whole heck of a lot better. The organization will go so much further. If you have a sense that you need to be better than, more than, smarter than someone that is going to be reporting into you, you're not adding capacity into that. You're hiring a task rabbit. Look, in some cases that may be completely fine and adequate. Maybe that's what you need at the time. So no shade if you decide to do it, but there's just so much more capacity added, so much more value added into the work that you're doing if you can find humility and be willing to hire somebody that sort of intimidates you just with their level of capability. I'm lucky in that our C-suite, they're all tens. The second thing I'd probably mention in talent and in hiring great talent, specifically if you're looking at senior leadership or an executive team, look at yourself first and be really, really honest. My team fill all of my gaps. I know what I'm good at, what I'm not great at, what lights me up and gives me energy and that I should lean into. I know the things that I can do and would like to maybe never ever have to do if possible. So I've really tried to hire for things that complement my skill set and fill gaps. For example, I know that my leadership, what I uniquely bring to the table is around transformational growth, vision, and strategy. That's what I offer. I am not your girl for keeping the trains running on time. And no, I don't want an incredible level of detail about almost anything.
Right.
But my COO, my CFO, our chief program officer, and our chief development officer, they're all more analytical than I am, more data driven than I am. They're all measured and thoughtful and less, I don't know, reactive.
Hmm.
kind of in their decision making. As a result of that, I think that we have kind of a little microcosm of what our entire organization represents in terms of personalities and working styles. Because of that, we can make better decisions, and we can also communicate those decisions more capably through the organization in ways that present to each individual staff person closer to what their needs are. That in turn, I think, makes our entire team more productive.
That's brilliant. I became a leadership coach because of seeing some of the gaps of not being complimented around, or like you mentioned, humility, the idea that we have to be uncomfortable to lead well. We have to recognize that although we're good at things, we're not good at everything. One last question. As you think through a year from now, if you could wave your magic wand and make a tweak or a change to kind of get to your optimum goal, what change would that be?
One wildly important goal for next year is about diversification of our revenue streams. We've got a changing world. That includes the market conditions. It includes philanthropy. So the need to make sure that we have philanthropy. We're about 98% philanthropy backed, meaning we fundraise 98% of all the money that comes in. But balancing that with some earned income through paid services that is still complementary and in line with our mission is really going to be critical to the continued stability of the organization. And a decreased reliance on philanthropy means a lot more freedom for creative program design. And circling back to the AI conversation, if we're going to continue to stay relevant in service to what the community needs are, that we need to be able to be dynamic and responsive and make the decisions that we need to make about how we leverage our own funding.
You made a huge pivot, obviously, in the 2020 range between AI and some of the changes in economics and just the world. It sounds like you're ready for the next pivot, or at least know that you need to be ready for it. So.
Yeah, I think the work will be about deepening the relationships that we have in the communities that we serve and refining our programs and processes in such a way that we are really getting to make space for excellence and kind of leveling up yet again the quality and service of our programs and the responsiveness to the community.
Any last things that you want to tell about what you're doing, or encourage maybe a younger person getting into serving their community? What do you want to close us with?
I think I would say that of all of the nonprofit organizations out there that are doing such incredible work across the country, what I love about the problem that we solve is how incredibly solvable it is. Somebody doesn't have a computer, you can donate your computers. It keeps waste out of landfills, gives something a second life, and gives somebody a brighter future. That's an amazing way to get involved and ensure that your tech is going somewhere useful. Of course, we always have volunteerism opportunities. If you're looking at getting involved in nonprofit or in working in an NGO of some kind in your future, I would highly, highly, highly recommend volunteering at as many as you possibly can, finding not just a mission that fulfills you, but an organization that has a culture that works for you. Nonprofit work is extremely difficult. It's usually resource poor and time heavy, and you take it home with you every day because it's about people. If you're not connected to the organization, if you're not connected to the work, it can really be pretty heavy. So find what actually lights you up, and an organization that's delivering and fulfilling in a way that you find inspiring and will keep you going.
Good words.
Yeah.
Is there a requirement for like how old the computer is, or all the specs?
Yeah.
Like
So
make it real.
We will take, your 10-year-old laptop that is sitting on the shelf in your closet right now, along with that box of cords that I know you all have sitting right next to it. We will take that. We don't take printers, but we'll take cell phones. When they're wiped and refurbished, everybody's sensitive about their data, as you absolutely should be. We've got a Department of Defense level wiping process. We can give you a certificate of erasure, certificate of destruction. If devices are too old to be refurbished and reconditioned and get back out into the community. We responsibly recycle them, and that the funding that comes from that downstream goes right back into our programs, helps us refurbish other devices, and it's a nice circular ecosystem. So even if we can't use it or use those cords, they're still being put to good use, and you are still supporting the program and making sure that we've got brighter futures for all of us.
Thank you so much for your time, and I really look forward to seeing how you guys grow and continue to step into this gap.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's a pleasure getting to be here.